Hi, thanks for joining me today. How long is it going to be before my stepfamily feels like a family? Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell and I'll let you know every time I post. We want it to work and we hope that the family is going to come together quickly. So one of the questions to ask ourselves first is, what would we consider it to be like when we arrive as a blended family? What is it going to feel like? And it is a very good idea to get a piece of paper or a notebook, back of a notebook or something, and write down the 3 things that will show you when you've got to be the family that you want it to be. And it may be something like that you can spend time in each other's company, feeling totally comfortable and able to laugh. Or it may be about having good times together. But when you think about it, any family has arguments and discord and times when they don't get on. So this idea that you're going to arrive at a family that's working and like you want it to be can be an impossibility, because what is that thing? So start by writing these 3 points down, and then you can know when you've got there. I always think that it takes for the stepchild to move to a different developmental stage before you can hope to feel integrated or as one, or as though you can treat each other like real family members. Let me explain what I mean. If your stepchild is, when you join the family, 7 years old, you won't feel like a family with that 7-year-old until you've been with them long enough for them to grow to be the next developmental age for that 7-year-old. So a 7-year-old becomes a different child when maybe they're sort of 10, 11, 12, just pre-teen. They've moved on, they don't have the same interests, they're a different, they've developed. And therefore, they and you are not at that initial period anymore. So they're not expecting their family to be as it was before or anything at all. They've moved on and you've got a chance of sort of creating this kind of environment which is different from the one that they had when they were 7. But because they've moved on themselves, they're happier to be in it. And the same for any age group. So if you inherit a stepchild and they're 11 years old, by the time they get to mid-teens, they're a different child developmentally. And they will look to the family for different things. And that's when you'll feel a little bit more blended, because you'll have been around for long enough for them to have got used to you and you to have got used to them. Same with teenagers. Quite often step-parents go into step-families with teenage stepchildren. And sometimes teenage children, those years are pretty rocky. And the child is sort of growing up and throwing their weight around, and it can be quite tricky. But if you wait until they're in their 20s, early 20s, then they will have moved on and the family will have evolved. Likewise, if you find that if you inherit children when they are in their early 20s, by the time they get to their late 20s, they will have moved on again. So I always think there's not much hope for integrating or feeling like one family while the children are in the same spot as they were when you inherit them. But later on, integration happens. There is such a thing known as team development. developed by a psychologist, Bruce Tuckman. You may have heard of it with regard to business and management and those kinds of things. It talks about team development being in 4 distinct stages. Forming is when you come together. Storming is when you test each other and argue and work out who you really, really are. And then norming, which is doing perfectly okay and functioning and the system begins to work. And then a stage finally called performing, in which the team does really well and everybody works extremely well together, and they feel as though they're integrated and they're working as one, and that's when you get excellent team performance, which is far superior to anything anybody can do on their own. And I think step families are a bit like that. So to begin with, you are in the forming stage. You're coming together and you're polite. You dance around each other, you accommodate each other, and you do what each other wants, and you're polite and nice and respectful, and no one wants to tread on anybody's shoes, and everybody appears to be getting on. Then comes the storming stage in a step family, and that's quite a long period whereby there are intolerances and lack of patience, and you're not prepared to put up with things. And actually, things can be pretty miserable at home. You can dislike various members of the family. I mean, really, not get on at all. It's a period when you may feel that you don't belong at all. And in fact, you want out. It's miserable. There's lots of disagreements and arguments, and there doesn't seem a way through. And the stepchild too may be wanting things to be as they were in the family that they've come from, and they don't want to move on. And they find this period of acceptance of what's going on now, pretty miserable too. But eventually, when you get through this storming stage, you can begin to have bits that work. So it's called normalising. And there are times when actually you do get on and you have fun and you recognise each other's differences, you recognise each other's faults, but you actually have some good times together too, and it all begins to work. And then finally, you get to that stage where you can feel joy and fun. But of course, these stages, forming, storming, norming and performing, are not discrete. You don't move from one stage to the other. You can sort of go forward and then slip back. And you think you're in the norming phase and things are working, but then you have another argument and everything falls to bits. So it's kind of like you sort of move through the stages, but you can always move back and then forward again. But one thing is probably for certain, and that is that the ideal image of what your family is going to be like when you join it is going to be different from how you feel about being in your family when you do actually feel content within it. And how long does all this take? Many step-parents tell me, in all truthfulness, that it's 10 years. Some people say it's 6 to 7 years, and some people say it's 4. So it can be any length of time, but I rather think that it rather depends what you're measuring. Because to really feel as though your family is your family, come what may, and this is it, and this is you going forward in a new life, it takes a long while, and 10 years is a realistic goal. And if you say 10 years, then you're managing your own expectations, and there's no harm in that. And of course, one other thing, it doesn't take the full 10 years before you're feeling you got there. It's a gradual process. So by the time you get to years 7, 8 and 9, things are almost there. And it's only at 10 years you look back and think, amazing, I'm feeling totally different now. So it's a gradual process. And if you're at the beginning now, and you're in year 1, year 2 and 3, you'll get further down this journey of forming as a step family. Years 4 and 5 will be better. Years 6 and 7, better still. 8 and 9, you're there. And 10, you think, I've got there. And the message here really is that you'll have good times interspersed throughout, and to make the most of those good times and enjoy them. And also, when you get to the 10 years, you'll still have the bad times. So it's about realising that this is a journey and to make the most of what's good on it. We run workshops, sessions, an email response service, and we write booklets. Look at the description box below for links to our social media and website.